Welcome back to WaveCast, the official podcast of the Marine Institute at Memorial University. My name is Eugenie, and in this episode of WaveCast, I take a deep dive into MI's Marine Engineering program, where I speak with the program chair, Crystal Hanlon, and alumni, Barry Oliver. This episode highlights various aspects of the Marine Engineering program, from future career opportunities to current experiences working offshore. So whether you are curious about engineering or if you're interested in applying to the Marine Engineering program, this episode will give you a glimpse into the maritime industry. Crystal, thank you for joining the podcast today. So we brought you on so you could talk a bit more about the Marine Engineering program here at MI. But before we get into it, I'd love to know more about you and how you ended up here and what your background is.
So my name is Crystal Hanlon, and I'm from Foxtrap, Newfoundland. I got into this after, I don't know, it was kind of a weird path that I took. So I was working in the fish plants when I was younger, and you kind of get to that age where mom says, oh yeah, you got to get out and do something. So I went and I done a computer course first, and that was 2 years, and I maybe worked 3 months at that, and it just wasn't for me. So then I seen an ad for Coast Guard College, and I started pursuing it. Anyway, long story short, I ended up at Marine Institute as a student. And then after about 10 years at sea, I ended up back here teaching. So it's been a long road, and I've been here now almost 15 years. So
Okay, and so now you are the chair of the program?
I am the program chair for marine engineering, yes.
Wow, that's a nice full circle moment for you then. So you were once a student here and then you've come back to instruct. Is there a specific course that you still teach or do you do any teaching still?
Yeah, so my teaching load is, I teach all in the simulator now. So I did a propulsion plant simulation course, and some of the courses done with industry, some of the courses done with our students. So it's a mixture. And then, of course, we do tours and stuff like that. So no, I'm immersed a lot. And then, like, I've taught a lot of the courses that are in the program with marine engineering knowledge, the graphics, the electrotech. So I've got a broad field with regards to the program, like in the understanding of the program. So
MI has an asset that you're here. It sounds like you can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the marine industry anyway. Like, marine engineers, they're kind of a jack of all trades, but the engines are our frontier. But I mean, at any given day, we could be asked to do anything.
Does the program here at the Marine Institute teach students how to adapt to those changes? Or is it just a broad number of courses that they take that makes them prepared to tackle that?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. Like, we give them a broad variety of skills, and then in their work terms, they're also on board, so they're getting some extra skills that way. In that, no 2 day is alike, even though it is like there's certain expectation every day, but what comes up every day it could be different jobs every day. So like, I think it's a combination of both, in that some of the experience they're getting on board is preparing them, and then some of the experience in the classroom is preparing them. If a student is thinking about coming into the marine industry and they're not sure, like, if the student is mechanically aptitude type person, they would probably be a good fit in the engine room. But then I have students that come in that have no idea what the engine room is, and they fit quite well into the industry as well. So it's hard to say what the background should be. I mean, obviously somebody who's got a higher background in sciences would probably do better, but that's not necessarily what it takes in order to be a great engineer. Like, if you have an interest in mechanical work and an interest in going to sea, then you're a great fit for this program. I mean, everything else can be molded and adapted, and, we can train you to do things even if you're not sure, right? So
it's nice to know that it's open to different backgrounds, and mostly that you need to have an interest or like a love for going out to sea too, obviously, is the backbone of it. Or you can come back and you can be the chair of the program.
there's so much opportunity if you don't like going to sea. I mean, like, a lot of our kids, like, if they're getting 10 years offshore, I mean, they're moving into the more advanced roles where they're wanting to spend time at home. So there's lots of opportunities, like whether you're going to work as a superintendent or you're coming back as a teacher, instructor, program chair, whatever. But there's researchers, there's opportunities with manufacturers. There's opportunities with regulators, with Transport Canada, with insurance companies, with D&D, Lloyd's of London. Like there's so many opportunities. Like you're not limited, and it's such a great opportunity with this program that you don't have that limitation. Whereas like some other programs where you're just down one path and there's not a lot of room to grow. Like here, you got room to grow. No matter which way you go, I mean, you can have a long-term life commitment within this industry, within this career choice, but you don't necessarily have to be down one single path. And that's a great thing about the marine engineering program.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be, well, not can imagine, I understand that is something that would be very valuable to students that are coming out of high school, for example, who don't want to decide exactly what their career is, but I think it's a good way of just taking a step forward into the maritime industry. And
yeah, and like even like some of the gamers and whatnot, like they're probably looking at, okay, well, I want to build video games. Well, okay, change that a little bit and come build simulations. And now you got the gaming aspect into the simulation. And plus that, with all the ships now and the trend to go towards autonomous, I mean, there's so many opportunities. Like, it's going to be a wonderful future for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, naively, I didn't realize that this also involved the simulators. I didn't realize that was part of it as well. I just thought, engines, but it's really a multitude of things.
Like, I always see that there's lots of potential in everything. Like, it's just a matter of how you look at it. Like, even you and I just talking, like, I'm sure that you're seeing similarities in what your research has provided. And then I can look at what you've talked about with the fish, and I can look at, okay, well, this is how it ties into us. So like this as marine engineers. So there's all kinds of potential with everything that we look at.
Yeah, actually, to that point, one of the aspects that I love most about being out on these vessels offshore is that everyone works as a team. And so there's not one person that's there that doesn't have a role to play on the ship. I mean, when scientists go on board, it feels like we're just kind of, I actually don't feel like we're that useful sometimes because we don't actually do anything to make the ship move forward in any way or navigate it. But of course, like anytime there's any sort of gear malfunctions, then who do we call? The engineers, or, oh, we're stuck in ice. Who do we call to put the other engine on, the other two engines to push us through? Oh, the engineers. So everything sort of, we all work together. And
and like life offshore, I mean, there's so many possibilities there as well. Like if you have a drive to visit the world, like I've visited some very nice places that I would never even knew existed, and I would never go there as a vacation rule because there's not a lot there. But when you get into the smaller ports and you can see, okay, well, what's there, and the friendliness of the people, and like the marine industry definitely has its advantages. And then to be able to live wherever you want, that's also a perk, right? So, and you can enjoy whatever you want in life fairly easily because the money is great, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of perks too. I always found that like when I was working, like there was no 2 day alike, which is what I liked. I mean, you always had a list of things that had to be done, but then there was always new challenges that came up. Like there was days I was plumbers. There was days I was a carpenter because there's stuff happening in the cabins that needed to be repaired. There was engine jobs where you were steady for days on end. There's just regular maintenance jobs. So like it really depended on what the boat was, what the crew were doing, what hiccups came up along the way, and that made it exciting. And then, like I said, when you come home, you enjoyed all the perks of being home, being able to relax and live wherever you want, go wherever you want. So there's advantages for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to jump back for what you said. You've said you visited some places that are very special. What are some of those places, and what in that time that you were working at sea? What are the types of, I guess, companies that you were working for, or what were you doing?
So my background was mostly on the Great Lakes. So I worked on the self-unloaders and the bulk carriers. And a lot of the cargoes that we carried were grain, salt, coal, steel, like iron ore. There was a rare load of sugar. There's a whole variety of cargoes that we carried. And up on the lakes, like there's so many ports that you got into that were, some were very close to each other. So you might have had 2 day steam. You might have had 6 hours steam to the next port. So I got to visit a lot of Canada and a lot of the US along the Great Lakes route. So like a lot of the little places that, like I said, you would never go because there's nothing there except for the port. But they ended up being very nice little towns where you could walk around, you could relax, you could immerse in the culture very easy and not feel like the outsider. So I found that great. Now, some of the cities like Montreal and Toronto, like they didn't really appeal to me. They were too busy. But like just getting off and relaxing and going for that walk and taking in some of the shops or, taking in some of the local restaurants. I always found that great.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. It's also nice when you're visiting places from the sea too, because you have a very different perspective than if you were to visit on land because you're on the water. Like you get to sort of, especially when you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden, oh, you're in a new port or you're in a new place. I always, it's a
Yeah,
nice thing.
and like seeing the different sides of the ports and seeing how did that big ship get in here type thing, right? Like that was always amazing, and like seeing all the coastline. There's some places we went had beautiful beaches where you could go sit on the beach for the day, have a little fire, if you weren't working. And there was other places we went that were like, oh, it was brick everywhere. It was not as appealing, but still it was just a different ways. Like I've been in small little places where the roads and the sidewalks were done in brick. It was neat to see in such a tiny spot, right? Like, and it was a coal town, so you wouldn't expect like going into a coal town that you would have such beauty of brick sidewalks. It was just different, like little things that stood out.
Moving forward to your role here, we talked a little bit about it before, but what does your day look like now that you're the chair of this program?
That's a hard one to answer, actually.
No 2 days the same.
No 2 days are, and they're still not really the same. I mean, I have a class of simulators. So this term I'm teaching our marine engineering students. So I have a class 3 days a week. And in between that, like I'm also correcting all the logbooks that come back from all the work terms. So that takes the bulk of my day. I won't lie there. But like I'm interacting with the students on a daily basis. Like I look after the students. If they had issues, they're coming to see me, and we're trying to find the best path forward, right? Whether it be with registration for courses at the beginning of the term, or like right now, the main topic is probably work terms. Like people are gearing up for work terms. And then probably at the end of the term, it'll be more shift back to, okay, I don't know if I'm going to pass this course. So what should I do type thing, or what should I be planning for next term? Or miss, I need this course. Like you're back into the registration kind of problems, right?
So it sounds like you also have a job within like student support too. So it sounds like the students are quite well supported in this program.
Yeah, I think so. Like,
and that they succeed in it because they're it's well structured.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's a 4-year program that's very heavy laden with courses. I mean, there's a lot of math courses, a lot of mechanics, but there's also a lot of engineering knowledge courses. And like we skim the top with a lot of the knowledge that the engineers need to have. I mean, the engineering is so vast that there's a lot of stuff that we need to understand. However, like we also do some workshop courses and whatnot that kind of de-stresses, kind of more fun, but it's still all relevant to what we need on board. But I don't know. I think like support wise, I mean, we try to help students where we can, whether that's, sitting down for a chat or if it's helping to organize their term, especially if they're falling behind or whatnot. Like we try to pick the best path forward so that we minimize how long extra they have to be here.
The program itself is 4 years?
4 years, yeah.
And there is 1 or 2 work terms?
3.
3? Whoa.
Yeah.
What's generally like the overview timeline of when they have to do these work terms?
When the students first come in, they do 2 terms and a tech session in the first year. And the 2 terms, there's some marine engineering knowledge and there's some graphics and some electrical knowledge, and then there's some workshops. In tech session, they get into some of the safety courses along with some of the academic courses. And then that first summer, they go on vacation. And that's the last vacation they get from the program, because other than that, they're going to be in either academic terms. So they come back in second year, they're going to do 2 academic terms again. They're going to do a tech session. And then that first summer, they're going on. So in year 2, that summer, they're going on their first work term. They come back for an academic term. Then they go again for a work term. Then they're back for an academic term and a tech session, I believe it is then. And then they go for another work term. And then they got a term and a tech session. And then they're graduated, hopefully.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do they find the work terms?
So some people have their own contacts where they contact an employer and they'll get their work term that way. Or we have our Office of Career Integrated Learning. They contact employers run job ads for them, and then they help the students. They also help with resumes, interview skills, that kind of stuff.
We sort of touched on it a bit before, but do you have any advice for incoming students into the program, or potentially even students that are graduating out of the program and who are entering into the marine industry?
I guess if I was looking at a kid who was coming in from high school, like I would advise them, do your maths, do your sciences, especially your physics and your chemistry. Those ones are going to carry you furthest. If you're good at those, or at least have some introduction to those, then the challenges you're going to face in the programs are going to be easier. For a student who's already signed up, I guess the advice there would be keep on top of your work. Have fun, but keep on top of your work. Because, with this 4-year program, things get heavy at times, and it's quite easy to fall behind if you don't keep on top of everything.
Mm-hmm. I can see how that would happen given how structured it is and how everything is sort of wedged very nicely into work terms, going out and doing your academic terms. And yeah, you can see it's good advice.
And I guess another piece of advice too is like, if you're struggling, don't struggle long. Like, seek help, because the quicker you deal with the problem, the quicker the struggles end, and you'd have a better success rate, I guess. Yeah. But like I said, the main thing is to have fun while you're doing the program. Yeah.
That's good. And enjoy visiting the really quaint places that you wouldn't get to see on your work terms.
Yeah, like for the kids going on work term, the advice is, get your hands dirty, get into everything you can, and when you're in port, go and see what you can, because you might never get to that port again. Enjoy your time while you're out there. I mean, yes, you got your schoolwork, but you got a lot of potential for learning there, and enjoy it to the fullest. Yeah.
Well, Crystal, I think that the students that are listening would have gotten a lot out of this podcast, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, no problem.
Next up, we have Barry Oliver, who is a graduate of the Marine Engineering program and who currently works offshore in Newfoundland, and who talks a little bit about the day in the life of what his work as a marine engineer looks like. Barry, welcome to WaveCast. We just said before we started recording that this is our first time of having a marine engineering or a marine engineer alumni on here, which is really exciting. So today we were going to talk about your background and how you got to the Marine Institute and like where you're from. Are you from Newfoundland? Are you from outside? And then, so how did you end up at the Marine Institute in the first place?
I am from a small town in southwestern Nova Scotia called Parker's Cove. I grew up in a fishing family, so I grew up working on the water. I was in, I guess, the later part of high school when I decided that I didn't know just how a career at fishing would sustain through my working career, seeing how the changes were happening. So I started looking into other marine jobs. And at first I was thinking I might want to pursue more the nautical science side of the industry. But after doing some more research and stuff, I decided that engineering was a better fit for me, given that I've always been a more hands-on person. And so as far as for going to Marine Institute, really on the East Coast, there's the Marine Institute or NSCC in Cape Breton. And ultimately, I chose Marine Institute because it was cheaper.
So what was the program like at that time? Was it a 4-year program? And when did you graduate from that?
So I started in 2013 and it was a 4-year program, and I graduated in 2017.
Does that lead in nicely to what you're doing now, like with your current role offshore?
I work for Alterra Infrastructure right now, who operate the shuttle tankers going between the offshore rigs in Newfoundland and into Whiffen Head. And I did my last 2 work terms while I was in school with them, and just carried on into a job when I finished school and wrote my 4th class.
We've heard that a lot with different programs. I know the nautical science program as well. A lot of students who've done a work placement end up staying with that same employer after they graduate.
Yeah, it's very common, especially for your last work term. Usually it's recommended that if there's a company that you'd like to work for after school, you try to do your last work term with them. leave a good impression, and then the doors sort of already open for when you graduate and write your first ticket. You've already established that communication with the company, and if you performed well, then hopefully they already like you.
So, what does a sort of a day in the life look like for a marine engineer? Everything from your shift work, because I know it's like a certain amount of time on and off. And then what does it actually look like once you're on the vessels? What are you doing in your shift time?
It varies between all the different companies and what they're operating for ships and whatnot. But for us on the shuttle tankers, we typically work a 4 on, 8 off shift. That leaves a bit of flexibility if there's issues that arise. You can work more hours than that without it interfering with hours of rest. But yeah, so during your time on watch, you're the engineer in charge of the watch generally. So there's quite often just you and a motorman or engine room assistant in the engine room at that time. Depending on the ship's operation, if, say, for us, when we're loading at one of the oil rigs offshore, we're required to have the engine control room manned at all times. So the engineer in charge of the watch is in the engine control room monitoring the equipment from there, while the engine room assistant is out actually in the engine room doing physical rounds, eyes on stuff. So you're not able to do any maintenance or anything like that while you're hooked up to the rig loading. It's strictly make sure everything stays running. Our real maintenance time is when we get anchor periods in between loads. So once we go in, discharge, typically I'll have a few days at anchor before we have to go back offshore and load again.
Do you have a preference over what you're doing in your job? Is there like a highlight, something that you really like? Is it the flexibility? Is it the shift hours? Is it the hands-on work? What about it do you really enjoy?
For me, really, I like that doing this allows me the flexibility of the time on, time off as far as work/home. But yeah, no, I do enjoy the work itself, the maintaining the machinery, the hands-on aspect of it, the troubleshooting when there's issues.
I work from like a very different perspective, but I work on ships, but we're usually like on deck
Mhm.
and we don't have any real, like we're not doing anything in the engine room, obviously. That's not where you put a biologist. But one of the things that I find interesting is when things break, whether it be like our sampling nets or even just like an equipment that we're using, we have to make do with what we have on the ship. And I'm always so impressed by how much you have to have, not only obviously is like your provisions, your food and all of those things, but also you're provisioning these tools. And like at one point we broke like a big net and we had a big metal rod that we needed to replace. And I thought, yes, I'm going to go sleep for a little while because we broke this thing. And then we had told the engineers about it and they had fixed it by the time we woke in a few hours. And I was very impressed, but I was also like, my gosh, it's too efficient. It's too well prepared. Everyone just troubleshoots so well. So I can imagine that that would be something that you would enjoy too, because you have to make do with what you have and your brain and everybody. Like it's very team heavy that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and hitting on I'll say, spare parts aspect of it, that is a big part of the job, is making sure that you have the spare parts available on board for each piece of equipment so that if a breakdown does occur, you have the parts on hand to address it and get the vessel back in operation. Especially when you think a lot of the large ships operating in all of Canada are built overseas. So, because that's just where the facilities exist to build ships of that size. So all your equipment is sourced from overseas. So it's not as simple as, you need a part for, let's say, an air compressor. Well, if those air compressors were built in Norway, you're not going to get parts very quickly. So you have to make sure you have them on hand, ready to go if and when you need them.
What is the timeline from when you leave shore to when you get to the rigs? Is it like a few days or?
So weather depending and how fast they want us out there, how much fuel they're willing to pay for, basically. We can be out there as fast as 22 to 24 hours, but typically we're in the 36 to 38 hours at an economical speed.
Okay, so and then you could potentially like order parts and ship them back to your anchor station or your dock site, and you just wouldn't have it for like maybe 4 days or something.
That's if it could be sourced locally. Because if it's got to come from overseas, then if they have the part on hand, there's still a wait time for the packaging. And then, typically, unless you're willing to pay for something to be air freighted, then it's coming sea freight. So you're probably looking at 2 to 3 months by the time there's enough parts ordered throughout the company to load into a container and ship over.
Okay, well, then you really have to be resourceful then. Also, thinking of the students that might be listening to this who are sitting in classes doing their exams at the moment, and if you could tell them, is there one class that really stood out to you in your time at the Marine Institute that was like, okay, that one helps me a lot every day for these reasons?
Well, of course, the core marine engineering courses are going to be your biggest asset, where you're actually learning about the different types of machinery and how they function on board the ships. But I would say equally as important are all the different electrotechnology and instrumentation courses, especially nowadays where things on ships are getting more automated. You have a lot more controllers, a lot more automatic functions in the engine room, and not all ships carry electricians. So on some ships, it falls on the engineers to do the electrical part of the maintenance as well.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about there's probably a lot of technological advances in your field as well. Where do you see yourself going with your career? Is it working for this company and then sort of working the hierarchy into it? If I understand correctly, I feel like you could do that. And then my second question is, what kind of advice would you have to a marine engineer that's either in their program or is thinking about going into the field of marine engineering?
Yeah, my career plan right now is to stay with the company that I'm with. I like the work, I like the company, and to advance my way up through the hierarchy to chief engineer's position at some point in the future. And for people either in the program or looking to get into the program, make your best impression that you can on your work terms. Put in extra work while you're on your work terms, ask questions, be involved. For the most part, people in the industry will take the time to show you anything you want and need to learn if you're engaged. But, if you just try to pass through as easily as possible, you probably will get passed over in the future.
So leave a good impression and apply yourself.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. Absolutely. Yeah. You leave a good impression, then, it always comes back to help you out in the future, whether it's you're looking for a job with that company or if it's just to have good references for applying elsewhere.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Barry, for joining the podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you to Crystal and Barry for joining us on this week's episode. If you have questions for our guests or suggestions for future episodes, you can send an email to wavecast@mi.mun.ca. Also, applications for the Marine Institute's diploma programs are now open, so if you are interested in pursuing marine engineering or any other diploma program, be sure to visit our website at www.mi.mun.ca/programs and courses/. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you tune into WaveCast. We'll see you in the next one.